In 2002, one man, along with his friend, didn't just buy a failing bank. He rescued it and transformed it into one of the biggest banks in Nigeria, Access Bank. The visionary at the helm of this financial empire is Nigerian banker and investor Aigboje Aig-Imoukhuede. Aig-Imoukhuede was born in 1966 to middle-class parents who were civil servants. His parents could afford a good standard of living. However, in the 1980s, the economy was so badly damaged that they could no longer maintain their standard of living, whereas those who worked in the private sector for companies like United Africa Company were not affected similarly. This situation motivated young Aig to pursue a career in banking, the private sector.
We were taught to pursue education like anything.
He graduated from law at age 19 from the University of Benin, Edo State, Nigeria, and immediately after law school, he joined one of the leading merchant banks, Continental Merchant Bank, in 1988. At Continental, he discovered that he enjoyed the practice of banking far more than working as a legal officer and decided that at the right time, he would make a move to core banking. Aig approached his responsibilities with a solutions mindset, always seeking ways of helping core bankers to serve their customers better, and soon built a good reputation as a lawyer to whom everyone, including senior bankers, could go for good counsel. Some of these senior bankers noticed something promising and bright about him, and within a year of joining Continental Merchant Bank, he was recruited to join a high-profile team of bankers to set up a new bank called Prime Merchant Bank. In 1991, Aig moved to work for Guaranty Trust Bank, which had just launched operations, and rose to become an executive director at just 32. After becoming an executive director, Aig realized that he wanted to own and run a bank of his own. This realization dawned on him while he was attending an executive management program at Harvard Business School in Boston, USA. There, his brother-in-law gifted him a book titled Buyout: The Insider's Guide to Buying Your Own Company by Rick Rickertson and Robert E. Gunther. After reading the book, Aig knew he wasn't cut out to play safe working for an employer and would never get to where he truly wanted to be if he didn't work towards starting his own bank. In 1999, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo was elected president of Nigeria, marking the return of democracy. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, before becoming finance minister under his cabinet, led efforts that pushed for banking consolidation to support economic reforms. Because Aig oversaw GT Bank's growing business operation in Abuja in his early 30s, he gained unique insight into the Nigerian government's reformed agenda. This made him realize that if these reforms took off without him, he would end up a very frustrated professional with little hope of making his entrepreneurial vision a reality. At that time, it was still possible for someone to buy a bank of their own, but as he continued to gain insight into these economic reforms, he could see clearly that the opportunity would not last forever. He didn't dream alone of owning his bank. He made sure his professional colleague and friend, Herbert Wigwe, agreed to embark on the journey with him. Aig and Herbert compiled a list of potential banks to buy. They discovered that the well-performing banks they preferred were too expensive, while the affordable ones were in poor financial condition or had conflicting values. Despite their frustration and the seemingly impossibility of securing a deal, they persisted. Their perseverance paid off in late 2001 when the idea they had first conceived in 2000 finally came to fruition, and they set their sights on Access Bank. But there was a problem. Access Bank was under investigation by the Central Bank of Nigeria for foreign exchange malpractices. While the management put a lot of efforts to redeem the bank, they were unable to put the bank on a sure footing, and they continued to move from one big crisis to the other. In 2001, the bank tried to raise over 1 billion naira through a public offer, but it received little public interest. As the deadline approached, advisors worried about finding buyers. Aig and Herbert decided to take up the unsubscribed shares, unaware of the surprises ahead. Their first challenge was raising the capital to buy the shares. They needed 1 billion naira, about $9 million US, but had only 200 million naira between them, which included their shares in Guaranty Trust Bank and savings. They needed to raise the deficit of 800 million naira, so they compiled a list of supportive friends and family, convincing them to pledge properties and bank deposits to finance the acquisition. When their bosses at GTB, Fola, and Tayo learned about their acquisition plan, they demanded a face-to-face meeting to know the truth. Without disclosing details, Aig and Herbert admitted to their involvement in acquiring Access Bank. they couldn't reveal specific details as it might sabotage their plans. The meeting was an emotional one as Fola and Tayo felt betrayed. Realizing that there was nothing they could do to get them to change their minds, an agreement was reached that they should resign their positions with immediate effect. Aig and Herbert expected a warm welcome as potential saviors for Access Bank. However, when the board realized they were taking over, they became defensive. The board labeled their actions a hostile takeover and didn't support their approach. Buying banks was not new in the industry before Aig and Herbert's arrival, but it was unprecedented for mere banking professionals without godfathers to challenge established industry leaders by buying a bank. Aig and Herbert were finally appointed managing director and deputy managing director of Access Bank after a marathon board meeting. While there were opposing views in the meeting, prominent lawyer Aigboje Aig-Imoukhuede was at his best countering legal arguments raised to oppose their proposal. Cosmas Maduka made passionate arguments in their favor and ended up having to drive at midnight from Lagos to the eastern part of Nigeria because the meeting lasted nearly 12 hours. In the final hour, Aig, with Herbert's support, revealed their plan to elevate Access Bank from the 70th position to Nigeria's top 10 banks in 5 years. The board was impressed after hearing him speak and wholeheartedly endorsed their proposal. Now, the real challenge awaited. It's easy to buy a bank, but could they deliver on their promise? While many businesses were hesitant to engage with them, luck shone on Aig and Herbert when Alhaji Aliko Dangote, founder of the renowned Dangote Group of companies, gave them the opportunity to become one of the banks for his company.
These are the most two aggressive human beings I've ever met.
Recognizing they couldn't achieve their goals alone, they made significant efforts to poach talent from GT Bank, where they had previously worked, and Citibank. However, Citibank, upon discovering their plan, became more interested in their activities and was determined to frustrate their efforts. Despite these challenges, Aig and Herbert remained relentless in their pursuit of top talent from these companies. Aig and Herbert put in place a demanding work system that made employees to work harder than any other bank at the time, and this somewhat made the organization become what Gen Zs would today call a toxic work environment. In 2002, Aig made the bold decision to let go of employees who lacked the capacity or willingness to contribute to the bank's goals. Several of the employees affected, however, were closely connected to members of the board and were consequently deemed untouchable. It took the intervention of key people to make sure that things did not get out of hand. Aig and Herbert were gradually transforming the bank until they received unexpected news. The then CBN governor, Chukwuma Soludo, announced a significant increase in the minimum capital requirement for banks to $25 billion. All banks were given until the end of 2005 to meet this deadline or face the withdrawal of their licenses. Overcoming the Soludo challenge came at a tremendous personal cost to Aig as he nearly lost his life in 2005. His health deteriorated to the point where he was hospitalized, and after 2 days, he had to be flown by air ambulance to London. Aig remained out of the country for 6 weeks, focusing on recuperating and regaining his strength to lead the final push towards meeting the 25 billion naira capital requirement. Aig and Herbert mobilized their workforce, quickly raising 15 billion naira through a public offer. They acquired Capital Bank Limited and Marina International Bank Limited, further strengthening their capital base by converting a $15 million term loan from the Netherlands Development Finance Company into equity. With these strategic moves, Access Bank surpassed the capitalization requirement and positioned itself for aggressive growth. By 2012, just a decade after Aig's leadership began, Access Bank ranked among Nigeria's top 5 banks, expanding its presence to the UK and 9 other African countries. In 2013, Access Bank's merger with Intercontinental Bank expanded its market reach, and under Aig's leadership, Access Bank grew its customer base from 10,000 to 6.5 million, with more than 10,000 employees and an asset base of $12 billion. This accomplishment wasn't achieved without Aig enduring personal attacks from borrowers who refused to repay their debts and aimed to obstruct his efforts in safeguarding Access Bank's interests. In 2013, Aig decided to retire as CEO of Access Bank ahead of the end of his tenure and handed over to his partner, Herbert Wigwe. This well-planned succession was widely praised and celebrated. Under Herbert's leadership, Access Bank continued its aggressive expansion. The pivotal moment came in 2018 when Access Bank merged with Diamond Bank. This strategic move positioned Access Bank as the largest bank in Nigeria by assets and retail business, with 646 branches and the largest network of ATMs and POS terminals. By 2022, Access Bank had a workforce of over 6,000 professionals serving more than 52 million customers across 17 markets worldwide. Everything was going well until the worst event of all occurred in 2024. Herbert Wigwe, along with 5 others, tragically passed away on February 9, 2024, when the Eurocopter EC-130 they were traveling in crashed near Nipton, California. Also killed were his wife, Doreen Chizoba Wigwe, his 29-year-old son, Chizi Wigwe, former Nigerian Exchange Group PLC chairman, Abimbola Ogunbanjo, and 2 other crew members. They were en route from Palm Springs International Airport to Boulder City, Nevada on a charter flight operated by Orbic Air to attend Super Bowl 46 in Las Vegas.
Herbert lived life as a man on a mission who had limited time within which to complete his work.
I feel very, very helpless because I could not prevent the tragedy that befell my friend Herbert Wigwe.
Just like Aig, Herbert stepped down as the CEO of Access Bank 2 years before his tenure expired to assume the role of Group Managing Director of Access Holdings plc after approvals for its holding company structure. Following the untimely passing of Herbert Wigwe, the Holdco board conducted extensive consultations with key stakeholders. In recognition of the foundational work jointly laid by Aig and Herbert, which elevated Access Bank to one of Nigeria's top 5 banks, the board decided to appoint Aig-Imoukhuede to lead the organization as non-executive chairman. The board emphasized Aig's indispensable role in ensuring the organization's continuity and maintaining its strong position in the industry. Prior to this appointment, Aig didn't rest on his laurels. In 2015, after retiring as CEO, he founded the Coronation Group, an investment management conglomerate that provides services including merchant banking, insurance, wealth and asset management, securities and brokerage services, trustee and registrar services, and venture building services. The group has expanded to operate with $200 million of its own capital and has offices not only in Nigeria but also in other African countries, placing it among the continent's largest privately owned players.
African opportunity is overcoming challenges. That's the opportunity, okay?